a label just released a track that I co-produced, and it's been out for months. Nothing, no paperwork, nothing. It's weird because it puts me in a position of power, right? Good morning, everybody. What's going down? It is the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. My name is DJ Payne. One, the gang's all here. Dame is back. He's no longer. Someone said Dame made the right decision to not jeopardize his marriage in the first month. I think it's true. But I do think if the technical problems hadn't even been present, Dame probably would have been on, and his marriage would have been fine, because everybody knows that Dame is dedicated. Do you know we came up with a new nickname for you, Dame?
What's that?
Dedicated Dame, because it's alliteration.
I mean, that works. My wife, unless she's lying to me, she's not tripping. I feel like I'm present, when I need to be. And, she understands that I have responsibilities. So it's all about communication. And I think we're going to dive deeper into that as we get into some of our topics. But I wanted to give a couple shout outs to some independent artists. LaRussell continues to do his thing. I wish I could have made the show. He had a show in LA. He rented a bus, took his whole team from the Bay down here, performed at the Roxy, and then drove right back right afterwards and had footage available within less than 24 hours. So his team is doing his thing. He continues to tell his story, and it's starting to get a lot more love outside of the Bay Area. So shout out to LaRussell for continuing to do his thing. I also wanted to shout out Russ, because Russ dropped a banger with Ed Sheeran. That song is crazy. Like the song is, obviously it's Ed Sheeran, so it's going to do crazy numbers, but it's a hit. It's a smash. Like, it's a super smash. So shout out to him. I know that he posted a video talking about he put $1 million of his own money into the project, or into the song, the visual, the marketing. And then he had a video talking about how at a major, how everything is slowed down and how everything needs to get approved. And there has to be so many people that need to sign off on things. But now that he's moving independently, like, he pretty much can do whatever he wants. Obviously, there's not a lot of independent artists that can put $1 million into one song. But shout out to him, because I don't know. Have you guys heard the song at all? Did you see him posted? Yeah, it's out of there. I think that song is about to be huge. So shout out to him. Anyway, where should we start?
I want to ask Erinn if she's drinking a Clearly Canadian right now.
Yo, good eye, but also no. It's too early to have sugar. I just use them. I refill them with water, because sustainability, so I'm just drinking water. But I love Clearly Canadian. That's what,
I'm doing the same thing.
They're incredible. So wow, shout out to you. I have an emotional attachment to them now that they've come back and they're good. So shout out to that. They're from my childhood. Yeah, no, me too. And I don't remember. I was devastated because they were gone for decades, and then they brought them back. I'm like, and they were terrible.
That turned me off. That's why I didn't try them. Okay, sorry.
It looked like you were drinking one of my favorite drinks, actually. Is that the watermelon kombucha?
Damn, you got a great eye too. Yeah, this is the watermelon, and we need sponsorships from all these beverage companies. But I'm doing the same thing Erinn's doing. This is water. I'm just refilling.
Also, because watermelon kombucha is fire, especially from that brand.
The best watermelon kombucha is what is that? That's the Health Aid one.
Yeah, that's Health Aid.
Synergy is dope too.
Okay. Yep. I was saying the Synergy watermelon, #1 favorite kombucha in the world. That one,
there you go. We get music business tips, and we put you up on the kombucha. So actually, my bottle is right here. This is not the water bottle.
Sustainability. Come on, recycling.
No, this is why the three of us have stuck together for so many episodes. Apparently, one of your topics has to do with a podcast team that isn't sticking together.
Yeah, so my topic today, I saw recently that Desus and Mero broke up. They had a late night talk show, but they started from Twitter. Like they gained recognition on Twitter. Then they launched something called the Bodega Boys. They worked with Vice. So they've been working together for probably over a decade. Two cats from New York, I believe the Bronx, but they had a very successful run, very successful show. And they recently parted ways. So there's two things that I want to talk about that stem from this. And I never want to talk specifically about like why they broke, because I don't have all the details. Like we never have all the details. So I don't want to start gossip, but I just want to speak more generally about like how difficult it is for any group to stay together, because we see people break up all the time. And I think there are some things that start out very early where you can identify, eventually there's going to be issues, especially when there's success, right? Because, more money comes to play, or even before that. I think that, when groups get together, there's often a difference of what the vision is or where they want to be individually, right? Like, let's just say I'm starting a label and I want to be very successful monetarily, and my partner wants to like leave a legacy in hip hop and like wants to really like create like this thing that will be celebrated. So already from the jump, like my motive is financial, his or her motive could be more legacy. So at some point there's going to be a breakup for sure, because once that person feels like they've achieved what they've wanted monetarily, they're probably gonna be like, all right, I'm good, I'm done. Or if a person just like starts to grow up and has a family and that becomes more of the focus, that could, start to make things drift apart. So there's so many things that can happen. And that's why it's so difficult for any team to stay together, because like people have their individual motives. And I think it's so important for people to communicate, not just in the beginning, but tap in quarterly, semi-annually, annually, just to reiterate like what it is we want individually, what it is we want as a team, just to make sure we're on the same page, so that when we do need to transition, it's not messy. And this one appears, the Desus and Mero one. So I want to actually, let's just stop. Let me stop, because there's another element to this, because I think the reason that they had to break up, well, one of the reasons that was reported was that the manager started to develop a bad relationship with HBO, I believe, or whoever, where the manager started to develop a bad relationship. They said that the manager can't come to the set anymore. They didn't want him on the set. Mero, Desus was like, cool, like he'll just not come. And Mero was like, no, he has to come. And then like, that's what I'm sure there had to be like more things before that, but like, that's what was reported. So the second piece of my topic is like, managers just fucking things up, like, and how ridiculous that is. But anyway, just kind of going back to how difficult it is for any groups to stay together. I'm sure you guys have been a part of teams, organizations, groups that have parted ways. Like, what are some gems that you can drop to like try to, keep the team together for as long as possible, or any stories that you guys have to tell?
I personally don't think that teams work if the leadership hasn't been on a winning team before or a working team before, because I grew up playing basketball, winning squads. So working with a team has always made sense to me, because I've never not been a part of a good basketball team, like middle school, elementary school, even up to being recruited and not wanting to go to college for it. Right. So the sacrifice required for good team dynamics, and then also for just for like good leadership to take place, is something that's almost, I would say, second nature to me. I'm not saying I'm a perfect leader, but I'm saying understanding team dynamics is something for me. Like I'm a part of a family that had to operate like a team because my parents were entrepreneurs as well. Do you know what I'm saying? I've been a serial entrepreneur. So I've seen that when teams are led by people who don't know about healthy team dynamics, they don't win. And I see that when, like, my business partner, Brandon, we've never seen this much traction or wins from one company that we've started. And again, we're serial entrepreneurs, but he also is a phenomenal team player, and he knows how to play a role, but he also knows how to step up and lead. He knows how to empower me to lead and like my strengths. And so back and forth. And then we know how to empower our team. And so even as I'm leading in this dynamic, I'm learning new things. I think that a lot of times people also don't understand how you can be selfless, but still be a good business person. And I think a lot of people just want to be like, you got to give me credit. I got to, so I think a lot of managers, we are kingmakers, right? So people talk about egos of artists. Sometimes the managers and the executives, my goodness, they're like the egomaniacs, the executives, you got to like kiss up to them and treat them a certain way because they're making, so to speak, all of these artists, right? Which, and to a degree, we are and they are, right? So I think even with that, everybody becomes in service to this deified human because they're looking to get on. So I think there's so many social dynamics that happen that conspire against good teamwork. And good teamwork, again, like you said, requires really healthy communication. It requires a level of sacrifice that says, I'm willing to let go of my preference on things that aren't that big. You got to yield. You have to listen and be perceptive. And then it requires a ton of self-awareness. Those are emotionally intelligent traits. And most people don't work to reach that level of emotional intelligence, especially if they're talented, because then they just get the pass and people are like, oh, they're a genius, whatever. Or if you're a good business person, you're so jaded a lot of times, you're like, whatever, I just want the respect. So I think there's so many things that you have to navigate. You really have to understand, I want everything that I'm doing to be bigger. So I have to move myself out of the way. So I think, yeah, it's super hard to keep teams together, especially if you continuously elevate together. People always say it, but when money gets involved, it gets so different. And I've seen people that I've loved. I've seen people that I've legitimately put on. You know what I'm saying? That would not have a foundation had I not been there. Like really and truly have flipped the switch on me when I made them money. Like they have money now and they're like, it's crazy. Or when I opened up doors for them, and I'm not saying that I'm taking all the credit, but their understanding was immediately morphed by their greed. And a lot of people think that that's not them. It's actually the majority of people. It's good people every day are being corrupted by their desires and by their need for validation. So I can't express how much it requires, one, emotional intelligence, but two, the desire to grow, to be good at teams, even when it isn't convenient. Like it doesn't always have to be perfect and convenient. And I think especially when you're rich or well off from something that you created, a lot of times you're not willing to have the inconvenience because you're like, do you know who I am? Do you know how much I'm worth? I don't have to be here. And that's a really easy way to mess up a healthy dynamic.
I didn't know you hoop like that. I know you had like offers on the table. I might have to.
Yeah, back in the day. I'm not like that anymore. That's why I'm trying to get back in shape because I want to remember my former glory. But yeah, I played AAU and everything.
Nice. Payne, I know you've had experiences, in teams that didn't work out the way you probably hoped. What were some of the things that you learned that maybe could have kept you guys together rocking successfully?
I'm one of those people that has always had a adversarial relationship with this concept of teams, just because, and I know early on there was always that debate between you and I, Dame, where we would talk about teams, and I was always saying, you don't need a team, and you would always say, no, you need a team, and then we couldn't really agree on semantically what a team was, and I think we just eventually agreed to disagree, but I've had such poor luck with teams. I mean, I to speak to what Erinn said, I think the vast majority of teams fail because, people will swear up and down, no, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be like that. And then they are like that. It happens all the time. It happens in general. I mean, consider how many coworkers you don't get along with at your job. The only thing tying you together is the fact that there's leadership in the company and there's an HR department, there are all these mechanisms to try to get you and this person to stop beefing internally. And then there's this incentive of you getting the paycheck regularly. In music, we don't really have either of those things. And I would say, when I was part of teams, it was either a scenario in which everyone's equal, right? So there's not really a leadership structure, or if there is a leadership structure, e.g. a manager, then that manager, at least I'm thinking of a couple instances for me specifically way back when I first started, that manager didn't know what they were doing. And the manager ended up, again, as both of you were saying, the manager ended up having an ego and displaying worse behavior than the artist and the team that he was managing. So it's just hard to find people that are not only on the same page as you are right now, but who will be on the same page as you 2, 3, 4, 5 years from that point. And that's really where the key is. How do you anticipate where a person is going to be mentally in terms of their desires, because people change all the time. And it's not even necessarily that money's coming in, it's that money is perceived to be coming in. And then it's a huge problem because you're forming a team with people who don't necessarily know about the music business. And if you're not all learning at the same pace and understanding it at the same speed, then there's going to be all types of confusion. And then that turns into animosity because people think they're hiding stuff. And most of the times they're not hiding anything. It's transparent. It's like, the Funk Volume situation. Oh, Dame's hiding. Dame's not hiding anything. It's just you didn't learn it at the same pace. You're not where he is. And I'm sure, Dame, your expectation of all the Funk Volume artists was in 5 years, they're not only going to see what I see, they're going to know what I know, they're going to have experienced it because we're all doing the same stuff. It just, in practice, it unfortunately doesn't play out that way with humans. I mean, you don't want to abandon ship either. Like when I was in a team with someone and we started going up, and it was like right when we're really going up, he's like, fuck it, I'm going to be a drug addict. And I mean, granted, it's not that simple, and I don't want to minimize the grip that addiction has on you. But how could I have anticipated that? And how could me, people talk to me all the time. I won't get too far into this after the fact, like during the fallout of everything that comes with a severe drug addiction when you're closely associated with someone who's on this destructive path. And I'm hearing people say, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you stop anybody? Like, one, I'm not a drug counselor. And even if I am, drug counselors don't stop people. They counsel people. So was I there as a friend? Yes. Was I there as a teammate? Yes. And it just wasn't enough because it's not about me. It's about whatever they're going through. So there's no way I could have anticipated that. So when I look at teams, I'm very wary of them. I'm very skeptical. And so my biggest piece of advice is, look, if you're just starting out in the music business, join teams. They're gonna crash and burn. They just are. You're gonna learn a lot from it, but they're probably gonna crash and burn. Once you get to a certain point where you're already completely independent, because you don't want to be in teams just because you're codependent. You think you can't do it on your own. When you're at the point where you're confident in your own abilities, you're going to have way more clarity to spot red flags. And okay, this person doesn't seem like the kind of person I can grow with. Oh, this person's already doing it. I can see it. They have the social proof. I want to link up with them. I'd say then you have the power and the leverage, to create a much stronger team. And there's going to be magnetism because of that mutual benefit that everybody recognizes. I bring something to the table. This person brings something to the table. It's not just all a vision of the future. It's a vision for the future combined with something substantial and tangible right now that all of you have created as individuals. Now you're coming together. It makes way more sense. It's going to be way more sustainable. Yeah,
I mean, it's something that you definitely learn over time. Like looking back at my situation and like, would I even work with a Hobson today? Hell no. Like there were signs like super early, you know, just even in his background, right? Like, and this is not like knocking him, but he has brothers, but he's kind of the black sheep of the family, didn't really play sports. You know, personal interaction, you know, it's different because he didn't really have much friends. He talks about it in songs, like he gets picked on, you know, didn't really have many friends, never worked in a team environment, very to himself. And I think those are like just some of the things that just don't work in a team environment. A lot of times what I see with teams is like, you know, as they start to have more success, if you ask each one of them individually, like what they're contributing to the success, let's just say there's 5 people and they're like, say, hey, what do you think? Like what percentage of 100% do you think you're contributing to the success? Everybody's going to be like 40%, 50%. And then that adds up to like 300%. It's like, yo, but there's only 100%. So that starts to like weigh on the team. So when a check comes in, everybody thinks they're more deserving than maybe they actually are. And that starts the rumblings. And then you might allow outside parties to get in your ear. Everybody starts thinking they're the Justin Timberlake, the Beyonce, the Michael Jackson of the group. And then things just fall apart. And people they overvalue their individual contribution and they undervalue the power of the collective. And then they regret things, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, because it's, man, like there really was a lot of power in the group, a lot of power in the collective. And I just don't want to see that for people watching this podcast. If you can't, obviously there's not going to be anything that you can do that can 100% protect against ridiculous fallouts and things like that. But just tapping in with the right people, communicating, you know, very often, early and often, you know, hopefully you guys can have stronger teams and be more successful over a longer period of time. But I'm sure Desus and Mero will go on and do cool things. I think now, you know, they've established themselves individually as talented folks. So, you know, hopefully they got some things lined up, but it sucks to see. And it sucks to see that the manager was a part of the story too. You know, if your manager's fucking up things, I'm trying to think of a time where I had the bad relationship. Like most of the times I'm like trying to protect I'm trying to protect our potential partners from seeing how Hobson really was. Right. So I'm trying to, you know, maneuver things, even though he shows up late to things. So I'm trying to like, how do I get him there on time? Or how do I, you know, censor certain things that he would probably say that could fuck up a relationship? I'm more of a protector than somebody that's going to like mess things up. I'm trying to think of a time. I mean, because I'm not perfect. There's definitely people I don't like, but I don't know if that's ever affected like the business.
I was about to say, you're too business focused for that to happen, because I was trying to do the same thing. I was like, has it ever been a time where I messed up business? But there's been a couple of people, men and women, that I refuse to work with because of how badly they disrespected me. But I feel like I don't ever have to work with somebody who disrespected. It's not going to stop an opportunity. I'm sacrificing myself for potentially an opportunity, my self-respect. So that's the only time that I've ever been like, no, we're not going to do it. And I'll tell my artists, if they still want to work with them, I'm like, cool. But then in my head, I'm just like, all right, if they work with them respectfully, I'm just seeing you different then. Because loyalty means a lot to me. And you being more interested in a one-time opportunity, if they disrespected me, they're going to disrespect you eventually when you don't have the allure to them. You know what I'm saying? It may not be right now, but say you're not hot in a couple years, or you say something that they don't like, it's a wrap. And people don't understand that. If you disrespect somebody, you're a disrespectful person. That's just how it is.
Yeah, it's like you starting a relationship with someone who's in a marriage, and then their marriage ends and you're in a relationship with them and you're like, oh, life is good. They're going to do the same thing to you, and you're going to act like you were blindsided, but it was right there in front of your face the whole time. Let me read a text.
Go ahead. Guilty, because like I saw Hop drop a video about his former
manager, and label,
yeah. So, I'm, at this time starting the label, like I'm in my later 20s, so I'm not like super young, and I felt like I had a lot of life experience to that point, and I already realized like whatever you see somebody do to somebody else, they at least have the capacity to do to you, so you shouldn't be shocked. So now I got my own video with damn near 100 million views. So yeah, like I kind of knew that, but for some reason I was like, oh, it's going to be cool. Nah, it's going to be different.
We've all done it, because I've definitely done that with the management client. It's us. We think we can solve the problem. I think that's where my ego comes in. It's like, nah, they're not going to do me like they did them. I talk different. I think different. No, artists don't care. I'm all about them.
Oh yeah, no, and I've seen it. I mean, that same artist that I was in the group with that was having the drug problems that, among other things, that ended that whole dynamic. He went off and got a manager with someone that I really respect and to this day consider a brother. But I remember he contacted me, told me he's managing this guy now, and thinking everything's all good between me and him, and it's not. We're on the rocks because of all this weird stuff that's going on. And he goes, yeah, I'm managing now. I'm like, yeah, great. Just be careful, because he doesn't listen, and he'll say he listens. He'll say he's on the same page as you, and he just won't do what he says he's going to do. So. And the guy kind of chuckled and was like, yeah, I'm a different kind of dude from you. I'm like, okay, I see what and I love this guy. I'm just saying, this is how the conversation went. I'm like, I feel like the dynamic is here in this conversation. The implication is that you're just a better leader than me, or like a tougher guy than me, or something where you think you can really be the exception and really whip this guy into shape. Because you have something going for you that I don't, cool. Holler at me in a month. And that relationship ended almost as soon as it started. Because it's just really, and I say that to say the ego does come into play. And I'm glad Erinn said that, because that's a really honest thing to say. It comes into play, and we do think, regardless of who we are, whether we're a rapper that's working with a singer, whether we're a producer that's working with a rapper, whether we're a manager that's working with all the above, we may think we're the exception. You really have to, even though we know damn well we're raised with all of these idioms about, like when a person shows you who they are, believe them, stuff like that. And then we look at a situation and say, yeah, he disrespected this team over here, but I'm a different person. It could never be me. And then you blink and it's you. So spot the red flags. Otherwise you're spinning your wheels. Just do a better job. If I think all of us, every single one of us, and thank you, Dame, for doing this. We can look at situations where we've been in a team that has failed and say, yeah, you know what? I ignored a lot of red flags. That one was on me, and I can say the same thing. Of course, you look at people's behavior. What's the other idiom? Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior, something like that. I mean, we know this stuff to be true, and yet, whether it's an ego, whether it's a desire to create music because that's what we want to do, we have these visions. We're visionaries. All of that suddenly trumps our logic. And here we are in this terrible situation, and we're upset. But ultimately, we do have to look at ourselves and say, well, we ignored the red flags. We walked into that.
But I would also say, like, looking back at it, being a more seasoned music industry professional, like at that time, I didn't know what questions to ask about that first situation, right? Like I didn't know. I was like most, just a casual fan of music, not in the music industry. And I literally just watched another movie that was terrible on Netflix called Beauty about, essentially a singer getting taken advantage of by her father and a manager. So like I had that perspective, like, oh, that's the music industry. They're always doing that to artists. So I didn't even know what questions to ask at that time. And I don't think, I'm not going to say nothing like that could ever happen again, but like I'm definitely more shielded from it because I know more, right? And that's why the MEC is so important, for people to hear these stories and to hear from you guys about, you know, the things that we talk about, because it can provide another layer of protection that hopefully can prevent, you know, some ridiculousness in the future. Anyway, I know we've talked a lot. We took up a lot of time on that topic. Payne, I know you had something you wanted to jump into as well.
Well, yeah. So now we talked about how there are so many bad takes on the music industry and how everyone says it's this awful, evil place. You know, everywhere you turn, someone's selling their soul, someone's being exploited, somebody is drinking goat's blood on their knees in front of a statue of Quincy Jones. But I'm going to say something that actually is happening to me that is negative and terrible in the music business, and it happens all the time. I don't understand why it happens, but I'm in the middle of a situation. This has always been how it is for me, and this is a cautionary tale. This isn't something that should turn you off from being in the music business. I can only speak as a producer, but as a producer, virtually every time I've gotten a placement, every time I've sold a beat to a major label artist, there has always been, since the very first placement I've had, they've always either gotten the paperwork from me and signed it and then not paid me, or they've released the music, or they've released the music, not paid me, and not given me any paperwork. And then we're just left to handle it after the fact. And it makes me think, are they doing that in case I just forget, I get discouraged, and then they just never have to pay me? And like, I mean, it's crazy to think, but think about all the people that you've loaned money to over the years, or you've loaned something to, like, hey, I need to borrow your car here. Yeah, take my car. I'm only going to use it for 4 hours. And then 3 days later, they still have it. It's like, are you really going to make a big deal about it? Are you going to call the police on your friend? You know, are you going to take them to court? Probably not. And they're anticipating that you're just going to be nice and let it slide. And they just had a vehicle for an extra 3 days. I feel like that's what the labels do all the time. Labels are playing with producers. And I was on a conversation with, I've talked to so many producers. I don't even want to hear other opinions on this because I've seen it way too many times. Grammy-winning producers, multi-platinum producers, broke producers, rich producers. The labels play them. They sell the beat, or they don't even sell the beat. They give the artist the beat. The label just drops the album, doesn't handle anything. They haven't handled paying the producer, signing the agreement with the producer. I've talked to a lot of producers that have, made a sample-based beat, and the label drops the song without even clearing the sample, or with like being halfway through the sample clearance process. And what ends up happening, at least in the instance of like the sample clearance not being handled, is once the song's out, the person or the entities that own the sample have all the leverage in the world. And then that's how the producer gets jerked, because then they say, you know what, you violated our agreement by releasing it before we actually signed anything. All right, we're taking as much as we can. And then the label's like, yeah, cool, whatever, we don't care, we own the master. Yeah, the producer gets screwed, they lose publishing, whatever, we don't care. It's just weird to me because it's happening to me right now, where a label just released a track that I co-produced, and it's been out for months. Nothing, no paperwork, nothing. You know, my management is still not sure what's going on. And it's weird because it puts me in a position of power, right? I think they anticipate that I'm just going to play nice. And historically, I probably would have freaked out and been like, oh, this is terrible, I'm going to kick up dust. I'm not even mentioning it. on social media or anything like that, because it's going to get handled, and I'm in a way better. I thought had they, this is the ironic thing, had they handled business correctly, I'd have asked for very little, and now I'm like, wait a minute, I can get way more. But why do they put themselves in that position? I really, so that doesn't make sense to me.
So Payne, what is the title of the person at the label that should be responsible for communicating with you or getting this done? Do you have a contact at the label, or is it like a project manager? Is it an A&R person? Like who is the person? Obviously these labels are big. They have a lot of people, a lot of different departments. Like who is the person that's responsible for managing this process and making sure you're sorted out?
I would love to know, because oftentimes, I think more often than not, we have no idea who at the label is responsible for what. And it's not clear. It's just kind of who reaches out to you, right? And so in this instance, no one from the label has reached out to me. It's been it's artist management, that kind of thing. So our respective managers are speaking, but neither of them are label staff. So
I think that's the issue, because I'm going to tell you the frustrating part. I hear you saying that the label doesn't care, but a lot of times the label will say, hey, management, here's the paperwork that we need filled out from all of the producers. And going back to what we slightly mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of managers who are just lazy. And it's this too. Artists don't remember. It could turn into this whole, oh yeah, talk to da-da-da, he has this session. Okay, and it's like, I know from experience, which is why for all of my artists, I tell them, I'm not dealing with any producers. Like, you got to tell me the splits. You got to fill out the split sheets, but the music isn't coming out until these split sheets are filled out, right? But that's because I come from the rock world. We'll have 3 session musicians, and then our artists, we have to make sure all the splits are right. You know what I'm saying? So that for me is something that's fundamental. But when I was at Def Jam, they were like, like depending on how big of a priority, the person at the label is typically somebody who comes from the A&R department. So for our album, our A&R was the one who had to get we had to send him all the paperwork, and then he turned it in to wherever at the label. I don't know. And then there was other paperwork that each of those people had to fill out, to get paid, whatever. But our A&R specifically was the one who worked with the clearance team for Kanye's album. You know what I'm saying? So like right before Jesus is King came out, he was like, I'm going to be unavailable for the next 48 hours because Kanye's dropping in 48 hours. And I have to try to clear all of this music. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, it really just depends, but it should be somebody in the A&R department, but it really is on management. So if you know a song is getting placed, you need to be blowing up that manager. Like, hey, who do I need to be talking? Because managers will be like, I don't know, the label's playing games. It's not the label in this situation. I know for a fact. I've done indie, I've done major. Like the manager is the first, because the label doesn't want to go back and forth with producers. They want it all on a piece of paper, and then they'll send whatever paperwork, the final things, but they're going to want, it's just like getting a sync. They want to know all the PRO information, email, mailing address, all of that. You fill that out, and then the transaction will happen faster. So I'm sorry to say, yes, the labels don't care, because they'll just put the song out. And then if somebody complains, like you said, they'll give a bigger portion, but there's so many unclaimed royalties. And by and large, they're not going to spend the manpower for the headache, especially in hip hop, unfortunately. So there's just a ton of untapped royalties. They don't care if they have to pay you double on the song. They literally, or triple or quadruple, because there's 4 other producers who don't even know that that there's a song out, So I would make sure that you're staying in heavy contact with the manager, and then see if you can figure out who the A&R is, and then get in contact with the A&R, like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I know your management team is doing this, but it's way more the internal team than the external team. And
but that's what I mean. Why? So this is just common practice for these projects to be a mess. And granted, the label can wash their hands of the situation and have this plausible deniability and say, okay, well, the management is handling it. But if the label is releasing it, if the label is owning the masters, they're just actively infringing on copyright law left and right every day like it's nothing. And I feel like that can't be sustainable, but so far it has been. So this is a bigger conversation, I guess, than just, individuals having confusion. Because there have been situations where I've worked directly with the label, and then it's like, oh, the check got lost, or some paperwork. You got to fill this out. So it's like, damn, I got to wait 6 months just to get paid, or certain labels that have all the information. I'm not gonna. Well, he said it publicly when I actually, I don't know. I don't know what happened in the Travis Scott situation, but that was a situation where the sample wasn't cleared and like the paperwork wasn't done, but a song got put out and everything worked out fine. Everyone was happy. But in some cases, that's not how it works. And you get these situations where, an artist who gets sampled comes back and takes everything, or there are artists who are just not at all, producers who never get paid. And they're just like, I don't know. They stopped contacting me. And it's like, okay, now the burden is on you paying a team just to get the money that you were owed to begin with. And so that $5,000 advance that you thought you were getting is now reduced to $2,000 because you just paid all these legal fees and the manager's commission and this and that. And that part is bullshit to me. I hate it. And also what I hate is, Erinn, you're absolutely right. Labels don't want to deal with producers in most cases, or in a lot of cases, I should say. And so they depend on the managers. That incentivizes the managers pulling some shitty moves with the producers, i.e. buyouts. You know what? Let's make it easy. I'm stressed. Also, I want a bigger piece for myself and for my artists, and I'm going to make it easier on the labels. So now they're going to love me. I'm just going to submit these contracts as a third party, and I'm going to furnish the project to the label, kind of like a production deal. And those are bad. Those are terrible. And then the person who makes the beat, because they're just some kid from down the street or whatever, they've just sold all their rights. And trust me, they're doing that to me. I'm in my 30s. I've been in this game for a long ass time. They're still trying to do that to me. And you're seeing it happen. To me, that's the worst part. And so obviously everything that we talk about on this podcast goes back to educating yourself and understanding what's going on, understanding because they'll send contracts and like emails that are supposed to be kind of informal contracts that just outline in plain English, hey, you're getting robbed. Please confirm that that's okay with you. And a lot of people just be like, yeah, I want the song out, not even thinking about it. Or in my case, a lot of times it's someone saying, no, don't worry, don't pay attention to what's on that email. Just say yes, and we'll handle it later. Trust me, we'll make it right. Obviously, they're not going to make it right. So it's kind of crazy to navigate the music business. You have to not only know about the music business, you have to kind of be a manager, a lawyer, an artist, and a psychologist, and like a behavioral specialist all in one, just to navigate it successfully. And it's impossible to navigate it at 100% success rate. You're always going to mess up. But God, I love doing music, but damn, it's a lot sometimes. It's a lot sometimes when the situation is especially trying. Oh my God, it's too much sometimes at once.
I mean, we heard these stories even before streaming, right? Like labels, taking long to pay out and things like that. So I would imagine not very many. I've never worked at a label, so I can't say this with 100% certainty. But now with like 4 times, 5 times the amount of music coming out, like I'm sure that they don't have the processes in place, the infrastructure to like move like a well-oiled machine. So I don't expect labels to be on top of their shit. So that I think it just makes it more so that like we have to be on top of our shit as much as possible. Be organized, keep tracks of your songs, where they're getting placed, where you've gotten paid, where you didn't get paid, and you have to follow up. You have to follow up just to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's and get paid for the things in which you're owed money. You probably can lose out of a lot of money if you just forget about this situation, or, because that's what a lot of people are hoping, that then, you just forget about it, life goes on, or it's not that big of an issue to actually pursue legally, because it will cost you more than you'd actually get paid if you won some type of case. Anyway, I know we're running short on time, and Erinn, you could take the floor for the next 9 minutes with your topic if you want to, because my apologies, that first topic ran way longer. I'll be more time conscious next week for sure.
It's all good. I kind of wanted to dive a little bit more into this topic, though, with pain, because even though I will say it is the manager's responsibility, if the manager already knows, like you said, they're getting cut by the label, they're not going to be rushing to get this done, because it's like, why isn't the label taking care of this when they own the master? So I do want to reiterate, it doesn't mean that the manager is a bad manager. And also, again, I just had this situation happen to me yesterday. I had a producer get my number and go off. He was like, I just checked my account and there's no money in it. What type of shady shit are y'all running? And I was like, this artist had to recoup first. You get paid after the recoup. And he was like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, you just got my phone number. So we have not the album came out a year ago. Do you know what I'm saying? And the artist just recouped this year. So, which is fast, right? He recouped in 13 months, which is great, with like a $multi-thousand, like a real budget. You know what I'm saying? A real marketing budget. He didn't get like an album budget or whatever, but yeah. And so that, again, I would say it could be on the artist too, where the artist isn't communicating. So now I'm like, I got to communicate to the artist. Were you unaware that you had to recoup before your producers got paid? Cause like, I also didn't get paid all of this time. And that's what I told the producer. I was like, I haven't gotten paid either. Like, nobody here has made money. I don't want you to think that he's recouping and all of us are taking home money and we're shitting on the producers. But I think a lot of times, back to the team, the communication is like, the artists don't really understand the business. The manager is hoping that the artist articulates something that they still haven't, even if you've taught them. This isn't something that I haven't articulated. I'm just surprised that 2 years later, one of the producers decides to check his account. And that's the thing. We had to reach out to all the producers, like, please register for your royalty accounts, because the way that our accounting system is set up, if nobody claims it, it goes back to the master royalty owner, right? Which is the artist. Yeah. He's now not going to calculate song by song the percentage of each collab. You know what I'm saying? It's just not going to happen. Like, he's going to take the money or be like, hey, bro, here's $20. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
well, can I ask you, did the producer get paid in advance for the beat?
He didn't. So the producers with this artist, because he's a really, really indie artist, typically they just get mechanicals. So this is like the splits that I was saying. They get 25% of mechanicals. They get splits outright for everything in perpetuity once the song is recouped. Because before this, there was no recoupment period. So they were just getting splits right away.
And do they get a contract that says all this?
Yes. So that's the thing. When they got a notice, a really informal notice, because a lot of the contracts were saying, or a lot of the producers were saying, like, we don't understand the contracts, whatever. So I sent them all an email like, hey, this is what this means. Do you agree to these splits in this? They all had to respond. Yes, we have a date that they responded to it and the day that the splits became confirmed, because we told the artist he couldn't release the album until that happened. Right. So then we asked them to sign up for the accounting system, so that, because it tells them where the recoupment is, what their percentages of each song, when that's coming. Do you know what I'm saying? Because shout out to Video, they have a really in-depth system, right? So none of this happens. I get an angry text and I'm like, I don't know what to do in this situation, because I thought on the manager and label side, I thought I had done my due diligence to help people out. But he was like, well, I reached out to ask about getting paid like 6 months ago and never heard anything back from the artist. And I'm like, So how are you angry at me right now? Like, this is the first time I'm hearing of this. I would have explained it, So I'm saying all of this to say I'm not trying to bash managers. Sometimes it's out of your control. A lot of times it's in the artist's hands, especially like, I don't know who made what song. Even still, I have to go look at the split sheet right now to tell you who made what song. I don't know anything about the creation part of the music, So I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of hard things to navigate in this industry, especially when you're trying to do right by people. Like, this artist didn't want to take an additional budget to make the recoupment period longer to pay all of his collaborators. So he asked them, hey, are you willing to wait a little bit longer to make money, but we're going to give you outright splits forever. And it's 50-50 on the publishing. You know what I'm saying? So I thought it was a good deal. Now I got an angry producer. I'm sure he's going to rally all the other producers on the project around it, and they're going to come for me, even though I've been looking out for these kids for years. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, when have I ever done anything shady with music before? Like, I've worked to make y'all money that didn't make me any money, but I don't know. So it had to do some of what we were talking about. It's just a little rant. Like, I think the music industry, especially when you're an innovator and you're trying to create the new future, which is what I think we all are doing. What is the future of music right now? And how does that look? Even when we're trying to do right by people, we're still catching the darts. So bringing it full circle, I think that part of a really good team is somebody who's willing to catch the darts with you and willing to say, like, this may be inconvenient, but I'm still riding for this. Like, I'm not mad at my artist. We got to have a conversation. Like, hey, I want you to be more educated, but I'm riding for him because I know that ultimately he has my back and there's no malicious intent. But if that feels like it's changing, I have to step back and reevaluate how committed I am to the relationship,
Well, also, and if it feels like people can't handle that level of adversity, which I think on the grand scheme of what you're going to deal with in the music business is really low, then that's another test, right? Because like, people don't want to sleep on a couch on a tour. You're like, yeah, you know what? Once this tour is over, I really need to stop working with this person, because if they can't just sleep on a damn couch, which everybody has done, unless you're like managing Joe Biden's children or something, because he does rap. Doesn't Hunter Biden rap about crack and stuff? And sorry, that's such a ridiculous video. I'm sorry. We could do a whole episode on that, but it would go very far in a different direction. But like, if you can't even inconvenience yourself for the sake of the team by sleeping on a couch, what's gonna happen when some real shit goes down? So on that note, take care of yourselves and really just cultivate power of discernment. And if it doesn't feel right, you don't have to jump into a team situation. You don't have to. There's nothing. I think a lot of people romanticize teams where they just want to be in a team. And you don't have to. You can. It's same with relationships. I always bring it back to the relationship analogy. If you don't feel ready within yourself to get into a relationship, don't get into a relationship. Casually date. If you feel like that other person is displaying red flags, you don't have an obligation to enter into a relationship or a marriage with them just because you've dated them for a few months. Walk away. You can always walk away. You can come back if you want, and if it makes sense, it'll work out. So on that note, appreciate you tuning in. Looped In is live. That's the replacement show for the MEC every single Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on BeatStars.live. You can submit 3 loops every single week, and we make beats with your loops. Shout out to Winnie. She made 6 beats in a single session. It was amazing. That's the new record. I had 4. R&B Justice had 5. She just came and blew everyone out of the water, and it was a miracle to witness. So someone has to make 7 beats in 2 hours next. I don't know how they're going to do it, but we'll see. But anyway, if you want to get alerted every time we go live, Dame, let them know how to text. And, it's great to be in touch with us anyway, because if anything cool happens, we're going to reach out to you personally.
All you need to do is text MEC to 844-206-7800, and we'll keep you posted on all the new changes and events that are coming up.
All right. Till next time. Peace.
Peace.